All right. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, Daphne. What up? What up, everyone? Hello. All right. Hey, Presente. Hey, Christopher. Hey, everyone. Gosh, it seems like it's been forever since I've been live with you guys. So good to see everyone. Good to see everyone. Thank you so much for liking the screen, tapping, sharing, all the things you guys know to do. You're awesome. We're going to be talking about patient education today. Hopefully you can hear me pretty well. Again, I'm not in my natural habitat. I've been traveling like crazy, and so all over I've been traveling kind of all over the place. So trying to get myself together and make sure that I can stay on top of everything in the midst of all the travel. So thank you guys for being so patient with me. I really, truly appreciate it. Let me see. There we go. I think that's like the long and short of it on this one. All right, perfect. I'm trying to like keep it so it's like you can at least see my face. All right, cool. All right. My lips are looking rough. I apologize. All right. So there we go. Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about patient education. If you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. Erica Steele. I'm a board certified naturopathic doctor. I hold 7 degrees in my field, all in the natural healthcare space. But don't let that intimidate you, because I'm here to teach you everything that I know about holistic medicine, about natural healing, and it's a lot. I've been in this field for a long time. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen people come, go, up, down, left, right. And if you're really interested in learning and really mastering this field, I definitely have a lot to teach you. So welcome in. Welcome in. If you're new, there is still time to register for this class. This is a self-guided course, even though I am teaching it live. It is self-guided, so you are able to tune in, tap in anytime. You just click link in the bio, scroll down, and then enroll. And once you have enrolled, you'll get access to everything. So kind of because I've been traveling, last week's information, I just posted what would have been Saturday's class. I posted it today. And so I had recorded a couple days ago, but had put it unlisted. And so I just now recorded it or posted it out for you guys. So definitely take your time. We are in week 11. This is a 12-week course. Intro to Holistic Medicine is a 12-week course. And we really talk about nutrient deficiencies. Hey, Chrissy. We talk about nutrient deficiencies within this course and how to address it both from a subjective as well as objective perspective. And so what do I mean by subjective and objective? Those are really weird words. Subjective meaning what the patient tells us. So we have a way to quantify, meaning measure what the patient tells us. And then we use an objective analysis, a tool outside of me, outside of you. And in this case, in this class, hey, Dee! In this class, we're going to be, we're using salivary pH for this particular class. And then we also use heart rate monitoring as well. So salivary pH helps us determine your digestive process and how you're digesting. And then your heart rate helps us determine your stress and stress levels. So so we're all good. Yay, whoop, whoop. So super excited for this class. We're going to really talk about patient education and how to deliver patient education, because it is a strategy. My lips are looking crazy. I'm going to, exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm on IG, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, I'm on the LinkedIn, I'm on them all. So, you can pretty much find me just about anywhere. And I've been on these platforms for a long time. TikTok's actually my newest platform, believe it or not. But definitely by far like the funnest. Hey, God's step. So thank you for that. Thank you for the roses. So definitely my like favorite platform I would say is TikTok. But I do really love whoop, whoop. But I do really love the YouTube as well. So yay. Well, thanks for coming over from the IG. My IG is probably my least least tended to platform. Definitely, I don't really do a lot with my IG other than just go live on it. I really need to get better at going actually on IG. I don't really spend a whole lot of time on it. I spend more time on my others. So thank you so much for the roses. Cool. So we're going to be talking about patient education tonight and how to deliver patient education, because we want to make sure when we deliver patient education, when we deliver patient education, we do it in a way that people really get it and people really understand what we're talking about, because otherwise they're not. So I've been like freezing cold. I'm back in the States, y'all. I'm back in the States. They let me back in, unfortunately. So, but I'll only be here for probably about another couple weeks, just kind of closing everything out in my life. I know. Oh, trust me, I've like bawled a million times since I've been here already. I'm like, why am I here? So I have these storage units I have to get rid of, and so I'm back to kind of closing everything out, and then I will be back in the beautiful St. Lucia, later on this month. So it's not that big of a deal. I needed to come up and do some adulting. Unfortunately, thank you for joining the team, doing some adulting. So now that I've been adulting, so I'm gonna finish all that up and then go back home to my beautiful husband, who's waiting for me down there. So we talk to each other, several times a day and all that kind of stuff. So it's good. But yeah, I live there. I live in St. Lucia. The beautiful island of St. Lucia is my home, where I live with my beautiful St. Lucian husband. And so, yes, I'm very, very excited. But I did have to come back and handle the things in the US of A and get myself out. So I'm self-deporting. So I'm not waiting for Trump to deport me. I'm just going to deport myself. So that'll be good. So anywho, so we're going to be talking about, again, patient education today. We're going to be talking about how to deliver proper patient education, because there is an art to doing this. Hey, Robin, so good to see you, my love. There is an art to delivering the patient education. Definitely. Yeah, for sure. There's some like amazing places to go to all over Africa, for sure. Yeah, I need to get out to that side of the world. I just kind of got stuck in the Caribbean and never left. So, hey, Roller Girl, good to see you on the YouTube. Yeah, so patient education, is really the core of what we do as holistic providers. We need to be able to educate patients in a way that leaves them touched, moved, and inspired. So remember, patient communication is not just about you pouring your knowledge onto the patient, but rather you delivering the information in a way that the patient takes that information and feels motivated and inspired and feels as though, they are, going to implement it into their lives. So there is definitely an art to delivering proper patient education. And so we'll go over that. Hey, easy going. We'll go over that in our class for today. As I mentioned, kind of last week, got a little befuddled, but if you're in the course, all the content for last week is already in the course shell. If you have any difficulty finding it in the course shell, feel free to send me a DM, a chat, whatever, wherever you need to do to contact me so that I can assist you to make sure that you're in the right location. And then from there, you'll just go through. So this is week 11. We've got one more week after this, and then we're going to take a 3-week break to kind of catch up and get situated and get organized before we start Intro to Holistic Medicine 2. Intro to Holistic Medicine 1 is all about nutrition and making sure that you have proper nutrition, whereas Intro to Holistic Medicine 2 is all about detoxification and detoxifying the body. So we are going to, let me switch up my, yeah, my lips are looking crazy. All right. So now let's talk about the difference between telling, teaching, and empowering, right? So oftentimes when we have information, we want to tell people, right, all about it, right? But when we're telling people, it can really put people off, right? Especially because people have all kinds of different associations with, because everything new matches up to something old. So there's always going to be an association that people have to information. So they're going to automatically match it up to something that they already know. So telling a patient something is not necessarily going to be as effective, right, as, let's say, teaching or even empowering them. And teaching, people learn from all different vantage points, and you'll have to remember that. So when I am working with patients, I try to get all of the senses going, the auditory, the visual, the tactile, and so when we're working with this, visually giving them handouts, speaking to them in their appointments, giving them things to listen to or watch afterwards. And then also too, with the testing and things like that, that's more of the tactile, so that they're actually bringing that information into their real life. I could tell somebody, oh, I see it in your blood work that your pH levels are, off, you're too acidic. But that's not really going to mean a whole lot for a person who doesn't necessarily know how to read their blood, right? And even though I show it on a graph and all that, it's so much more powerful when I have that patient, I teach that patient to take their pH levels on their own, and then they're actually able to not only see it, but then I say, hey, add all those greenery, and as you add the greenery, right, then your pH levels will go up. And then what happens is then they start to actually raise their pH levels, and then they get excited because they're like, oh my God, now I'm more empowered. Now I actually see what you're talking about. I see that, what I'm doing, and furthermore, how what I'm doing is improving, or what I'm doing is not improving my challenge. So now you really empower them to be able to really be a part of their healthcare, because ultimately we as providers are just teachers. We are not the big I am. Even as a doctor, I am not, doctor in Latin means teacher. That's all I am. I'm here to teach people, encourage them, motivate them, inspire them to live a healthy and a holistic life. But I can't, necessarily force people to do that, right? And so that's where we have to meet patients exactly where they are. And so we assess, how ready are they to get well? How ready are they to take on what you're saying? And so that's why I like to do kind of a long-standing consultation. So I'll do that initial appointment, and then I'll do a follow-up, really to see, okay, can you follow directions? Can you follow through with this? Because otherwise it doesn't make sense for me to continue working with a patient if they're not really willing to follow through. In the 30 minutes that I see them, maybe once a month, it's not enough time to override what they're doing all the rest of the month. I mean, think of how many hours, think of how many, unfortunately, let me see if I can, here, let's blow it up here. All right. Is that a little bit better? Sometimes it is better on the YouTube, I must say. TikTok is a little more difficult, I think, to have the words where you can actually see it. So that's why I'm teaching it. But some people like the TikTok format a little bit better. So just kind of bear with me on that. So I'm glad you can see it now. Okay, so when we're
working with a patient, we have to meet the patient right where it is. Thank you. Right where they're at. And then we are going to encounter at times resistance with the patient. And what does that mean? Resistance, meaning, they have certain habits, they have certain patterns, they have certain ways to which they have been doing things. And so, it's not going to be like this instant. Now, all of a sudden, you tell them something and now all of a sudden they're going to do it. They have to have buy in. They're going to struggle with it a little bit. They're going to have to process it, think about it, work with it, etc. And that's why we really work with patients on their mindset first, right? Because if we work with patients on their mindset, going from that fixed mindset, like we talked about in last week with self-concept, if you haven't watched those videos, please do, because they're really good about self-concept and shifting your identity, right? So everyone kind of has a certain identity and a certain thought process of where they're at, right? And so that identity, right, can be shifted, but only through your mindset, right? So people either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So their fixed mindset is, they're shut down, they don't see growth, they don't see the need for growing, etc. And that growth mindset is being open and being ready and willing for change. And it takes time for a person to transition from that fixed mindset to that growth mindset. And a lot of times patients need a motivator in order to flip from that more fixed mindset to that growth mindset. And so again, we want to meet people exactly where they're at in that unique starting position. So we really focus in holistic medicine on more of our, hold on, let me get this. Okay. More of our patient-centered practices, right? So what are those patient-centered practices? Hold on, let me try to get it. Let me try to push this up a little bit. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the patient-centered practices, right? So when we're working with a patient, it's really all about them. We have to remove ourselves from the equation, right? And so unfortunately, so many people have difficulty removing themselves because a lot of people are innately selfish, to be honest with you. And so you really can't be selfish in this profession. It's not going to work because you have to be able to put yourself and your needs aside to be able to be fully present with where the patient is. And here's where that kind of comes in on the court, right? So let's say a patient comes into you and they have a totally different lifestyle. Thank you so much. I know, I'm so excited. So let's say that they come in and they have a totally different lifestyle than you. Like for instance, when I moved from Southern California to Virginia, I really wasn't as used to kind of that Southern diet. I was more used to whole foods, natural foods, eating healthy, that kind of thing. And so I really had to learn and really be very empathetic to a patient, meaning that patients were eating, fast food, or they were eating high fat, or they were eating, deep fried everything. And so if I would have come in with my arrogance and my ego and said, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this, and I shame the patient, or I judge the patient, that is going to actually make it worse for that patient, right? Yeah, I know. I've been on the travel. I've been traveling, so yeah, so it's been a little hectic. So I'm glad you were able to catch me live. So yeah, so anyway, so I have to kind of put myself, aside and go, okay, if I was this person, what is this person going through? Is this person, have stress? Is this person, have a time issue? Is this person have a money issue? Does this person have an access issue? Like not everyone has access to healthy food, let's face it. And so instead of me judging or having this privilege of, oh, I'm up here and you're down here, I actually need to come down and work with that patient, and not to say that I'm up here, right? They can come up with me, but like I need to really get into the life of that person, and it has to be more patient centered. And so when we're looking at those foundational habits, like, like hydration, what is going on with the hydration, and why, why aren't they drinking enough water? Do they have access to that water? Do, they like drinking water? Does water work for them? Some people don't like to drink water. And so sometimes I would have to get super creative with, oh, well, why don't you try putting cucumbers in the water or fruit in the water? Or, and maybe I didn't always like, putting sweeteners in the water, but maybe, I had to do that in order for the patient to actually drink the water, right? And so doing patient-centered self-care practices to teach people how to make it accessible, right? And there are these tiny wins, that patients get, because eventually, if they keep doing it and they keep getting these successes, eventually over time, they're going to improve. And so I have full faith and belief in the patient that, if I support them and really encourage them and motivate them, and I'm a positive light in their world, eventually, they'll come around. And so making sure that when you're looking at those foundational habits, you're not just looking at it from, this really entitled privileged lens. And so right now we have a real issue with, RFK and his gaggle of health influencers, and now they're going after and attacking the SNAP program, and now they're going, oh, we want to remove soda and we want to remove all these things, from the SNAP, where people can't purchase that. And so again, this is a very privileged place, right? So and I can relate to this because, again, coming from Southern California, I went in and worked in inner cities, right? And I had my ass handed back to me, right? When I'm in there, like, oh my God, why aren't you eating this? And why aren't you doing that? And they're looking at me like, chick, like, do you even know where you're at? Right. And so I was so grateful for those people because they really taught me that we have to check our privilege at the door. And so, this is literally on the court. What's happening right now is that this kind of elite mentality doesn't quite understand how things, hey, Darkwing, how things are actually going in the real world. And so some people, they were raised with soda, right? And soda is their thing, right? Or, a 99-cent box of mac and cheese is going to go a lot farther than, let's say, a bag of apples, right? And so again, it's meeting patients exactly where they're at, and maybe we go, okay, well, let's try, these kinds of noodles, or let's try, this, maybe vegan cheese or whatever. I'm just kind of making things up, but we want to really make it easy and accessible. One of the things that we do a lot of too is creating patient handouts and simple tools. Over the years, I have tons of things that I've created that just make it easy. Checklists are really good. Printables are really good. Just things people can print out, check off, and make it super, super easy so that after their appointment with you, because remember, they're going to have their appointment with you and they're going to be kind of overwhelmed with all the information you're throwing at them. And so afterwards, I, in my practice, will send patients their post-visit summary of everything that we've talked about and kind of recapping it. But then I'll also give them practical tools, either a video or a handout or something to read or a book or something like that to reinforce what we're talking about. So it's not just coming from me, they're getting it from multiple sources. The other thing is implementing those self-tracking techniques. And so again, teaching patients how to track their pH levels, teaching them how to track their food, and it doesn't always have to be, digital. Even though I use an app in my practice digitally, some patients, it's just not accessible for them. So I have those handouts that patients can then, jot things down on a piece of paper because that's a little bit easier for them. And so it's really just about them, really engaging with the material and then bringing this into their lives in a practical way. Okay. I am going to get my next slide. All right, cool. Okay, so we also use education as an extension of the work that I do. And so again, we don't want to do the work for the patient. So we don't want to, there's always this set of boundaries that we have to set, because if I care more about your care than you care about your care, right, then it's going to be an imbalance. You're not going to get what you need and you're not going to sustain that. My goal always is to work myself out of a job, and I do it successfully. And so what we want to do is be aware of these patterns that maintain a healthy relationship. So if I have a history of being codependent, I need to definitely check that within myself, because I want to make sure that, hey, Amina, I want to make sure that I'm not overcompensating. I'm not trying to rescue and save everybody and fix everybody. Instead, I learn strategies to maintain those professional boundaries while supporting the autonomy of the patient. I have to view the patient as healed, healing, as working through, and also too, regardless of where they begin on any sort of educational level, it is my job to educate, motivate, and inspire them which means that I have to bring it to their level. So I always start up here, right? So I don't necessarily dumb it down, right? But I start the conversation up here, right? And then I bring it down through repetition. So that the reason that I do that is so that patients, I'm not teaching patients. I'm actually respecting people more by starting up here. If I started down here, right, it's actually not respecting them. It's assuming that people are not brilliant. And I don't assume that. I actually assume the opposite. I assume that everyone is super brilliant, right? So regardless of their education background. You don't need to have gone to school to be brilliant, right? Like all school is taking rote memorization, taking tests, writing papers. That's pretty much what school is. Not everyone has that intelligence. There's multiple intelligences. Some people are amazing with their hands. Some people are, brilliant creatively, musically, whatever. And so it's really finding what works for that patient, but also not, assuming that that patient can't understand. I have had literally people with fourth grade educations come to me, and through the work that I've done, have gotten what I've been able to share with them in 6 months, which has been far less time than my patients who are multi-degreed. And in fact, the more formalized education that people have, the more conditioning we have, unfortunately, because we're all been taught a certain type of way. And so really it's about me making sure that, I check myself. I'm not trying to rescue people. I'm not trying to fix people. I'm trying to teach people, show people, motivate, and inspire people. You're welcome, easygoing, to live a healthy life. And I do that through creating a safe space that is a healing environment. Also, too, we want to make sure that people take ownership over their health. So, in the beginning, I didn't do a lot of meal plans. The reason being is because I wanted to teach patients specifically how to eat. And so if I started giving patients meal plans, they would become dependent upon the meal plans, which means they would become dependent upon me. I don't want patients dependent on me or the meal plan. I want patients to actually know about their proteins, about their fats, about their carbohydrates. I want patients to know how to actually eat healthy with or without me, right? And so that means I had to break it down, again, handouts and different checklists and things like that to make it super easy. And as I did that, people started to go, oh, wow, what was previously super confusing for people now was super accessible, easy, and fun. And that's really what we want to do, is make it really easy and fun for people. Okay. Next slide. All right, hold on. Let me, what? Okay. So now what we want to do is I want to try to get as much of the slide in as I can. So we want to build languaging that helps support people. So again, there's a lot of terminology in holistic medicine and medicine in general, right? And it's not a bad thing to use terminology, but we want to break down these complex terms into bite-sized processes, bite-sized ideas that are client-friendly, right? So making the information, again, accessible. So I can explain things in 10 ways. I remember, I think everybody's kind of heard that, or a lot of people have heard that, if you can't explain this information to a 5-year-old, you don't know it, right? And so making sure that I break it down into client-friendly terms that makes it accessible. I still give the terminology because I know they're going to come across it and I want them to recognize it, but then I take that terminology and break that down. So using things like metaphors, stories, analogies. I love using the car analogy, right? Car analogies are really good when it comes to, talking about your body, right? So the fuel, like for instance, fueling your body, the food is your gas, right? Going through the engine is your metabolism, right? That's all the chemical processes. And then the exhaust pipe, you're eliminating out the waste, right? And so there's all kinds of different ways you can create different analogies, metaphors, and even stories. I use a lot of stories from my own life to illustrate, what it is that I'm trying to teach a patient. They may not always understand that. We have in psychology, there is like second, third, and fourth generation, right? So first, second, third generation. So first generation is going to be me, I, right? Those statements. Second generation is, a friend of mine, right? Third generation would be, oh, I knew, hey, Tori, I knew of, this person who, right? And then fourth generation is, oh, hey, Mad King is, oh, I watched this in a movie kind of thing. And so sometimes if a person is really triggered, you may want to go into that second or third or fourth generation, because if you get into the kind of you, or you're doing this or you're doing that, defense mechanisms are going to go up, resistance happens. So then I'll bring it back to myself, right? So I'll see where the patient is struggling, and then I will find a related story from my own experience that then will teach the patient what I'm trying to show them. That way they're able to learn just from my experience, rather than me, telling them what they're doing or what they're not doing, right? And that helps to not only improve comprehension, but also helps people to feel not alone, to feel as though, they're part of something, and also feels as though they have a greater connection. Now, you do have to be mindful of transference. What's transference? Transference is transferring, energy from another person to another person. So people don't assume that now all of a sudden, because you are opening up and sharing, that now all of a sudden, they have a deeper relationship with you than they do, so that can definitely be a challenge sometimes in, definitely I've experienced it more so with men than women. So, where I'll share different things, and they will then assume that, there's something that's going on that's not. So I also want to avoid information dumping and focusing on the patient's pacing when it comes to their learning. So I'm going to match and mirror where the patient is. And so what does that mean? I'm going to be mindful of where that patient is in terms of their learning process, in terms of their healing process, and I'm not going to push them for, faster than they need to. I'm not going to, inevitably, and I'm also not going to step over things as well, right? So if something doesn't work, and something doesn't work specifically for me, I'm going to communicate that, right? And then if that person doesn't necessarily respect that, then I'm going to stop there, right? I'm not going to keep kind of pressing in the same vantage point, because it's just not going to work in that capacity. So I don't want to dump on them, or really, move them faster than what they feel comfortable with, because I really want them to internalize this information, and I really want them to get, what it is that I'm saying to them. And so sometimes patients can be frustrated because they want to move faster, oh, I want to get this, but it's not really, there's nowhere to go, right? A holistic lifestyle is a lifestyle that takes time, to build over time. So Mark, we are in Intro to Holistic Medicine week 11. So I am your host, Dr. Erica Steele, board certified naturopathic doctor. I hold 7 degrees in my field, all in the natural healthcare space. I like to say that I went to school so you don't have to, and I educate people about holistic medicine. So you have stumbled upon Intro to Holistic Medicine. So welcome in. You're happy to listen, answer, ask questions, and all the things. And so we focus on where the patient is at. And so as we're focusing on where the patient is at, again, we don't push the patient faster than what they are comfortable with, which means we have to really guide, support, and nourish where they are in their process. All right. Moving on to the next slide. All right, so this one, again, we talked about this a little bit already, but we want to incorporate lots of different teaching methodologies. Some patients are visual learners, so they need lots of graphs and charts and things like that. Like that's why I love biochemistry so much, because it's like a ton of charts, right? Where some people like written things, some people love to take notes, like they are note takers, right? And so sometimes, yeah, for sure, you can go ahead and ask it, and I'll just incorporate it in. So feel free to ask a question. And so some patients just love to take notes, and so I, account for that. They can go in and take notes and write and things like that. Some patients really need to take it all in, meaning that they need all sensory, right? They need the visual, they need the written, they need to really take that in. So I will tend to use all kinds of different methodologies, and again, I've developed this over many years, where, I'll give them videos, or I'll give them short demos or home experiments or things like that that they can do, again, to bring this, yes, absolutely, explaining about your health. This week is all about patient education, and it's teaching patients, right, how to take on the information with their health. And so but I can answer anything about your health. So if you have a health question, I'm happy to, answer that, because again, we want to meet people right where they're at. So Mark just showed up, right? And he's like, what's going on here? Right. And we meet him right where he's at, and we just include him right in to our lovely safe space that's here. So that's really, you have to be able to be quick on your feet, and you have to really know and understand what you're doing. Right. And so we talk about our health because our health is our wealth. It's literally number one. And one of the big things that I found when I studied the healthcare system, so in my master's in public health, obviously I studied healthcare and legislation, all that. But in my MBA, I studied really the pain points in our healthcare system. And one of the huge pain points is the lack of public health education. And so it's a lot of access as well. Patients don't have access to proper health education. And so what's a better way to get access to people is on the internet through all these different platforms, and then providing it in a really tangible way that they could go back and review and, experiment, make it more experiential, where they could practice with themselves, use themselves as, their teaching tools and things like that. So, really this course is an expression of this, right? Where we're using visual cues, we're using written things, we're using, the self-testing and things like that to really bring in, because maybe it'll resonate with somebody visually, it'll resonate with somebody verbally, it'll resonate with somebody experientially, but from all aspects, it's really going to help people. So health tools would be something like, your salivary pH, your urinary pH, your heart rate. So heart pain can come from all different vantage points, right? So the first thing when we want to think about the heart, we want to think about minerals, right? So the minerals of the, minerals run the heart. So your potassium, your magnesium, calcium, those sorts of things. So that's the first thing that I would start to add, is adding things in. Now, if that heart pain is kind of instant and persistent down the arm, you may want to go and get a cardiac workup. You may want to go get an EKG, ECG. You may want to, make sure that you're not at risk for a heart attack. You may want to make sure that, your blood sugar is stable. Actually, blood sugar dysregulations is what leads to kind of plaquing in the arterial walls. And so if you're not getting adequate amounts of blood flow based off of your diet, if you're eating a high fat, high sugar, high processed, low fiber diet, then of course, you're putting yourself at greater risk. And so we want to make sure that we're eating, a healthy, balanced diet. First thing to prevent so first things first, the symptom of the heart attack is the heart attack, right? So we want to prevent the heart attack, like Easy Going said. And so how do we do that? First thing is our diet, first thing before diet is our water. So we want to drink, half our body weight in ounces in water, so we can move things through our system. Hey, XOXO candies. Second thing is getting our blood sugar in balance, making sure we're eating adequate amounts of protein. We're keeping, let's start with like 100 grams of protein, lean sources first, chicken breast, turkey breast, white fish, plant-based protein sources. Then we want to make sure we're eating lots of high fiber complex carbohydrates. So that's going to be like your fruits and your vegetables. That's going to be like your green vegetables, broccoli, kale, collards, things like that, salads, romaine, lettuce, green leafies. Those are all things that are going to help with that fiber. So if you have your protein, your fiber, that is really going to keep your blood sugar balanced. Keeping those simple carbohydrates, your bread, pasta, rice, dairy, all those things low, while also too making sure, I'm so sorry, my love. Yeah. So making sure that, people are, really getting more proactive instead of reactive with their health. Again, hey, MBW Sammy, again, yeah, no kidding. So sorry for your loss, my love. Yes. And in fact, somebody else, the person I'm staying with had a similar situation with a friend of a friend. And so, this is again why I get out here and I teach people, because people don't know and they're not aware, and they're Number one, they're scared. Number two, the conventional doctors are not teaching this information. They're not out there with the people. They're sitting in their, little little white boxes, and telling patients the craziest things. I mean, this week alone, I had a patient that, came in for vertigo and dizziness and clear cognitive impairment issues. And what was and she went to the ER. They didn't do, they did the standard workup, but they didn't do a cognitive workup. Instead, they just gave her a walker. Like, what in the world? Like, this is not healthcare. So we definitely need to get more healthcare out to people and more information, and especially with our men people, because our men people are so stubborn when it comes to their health. They really don't focus. So when we look at diabetes, we're looking at blood sugar, we're looking at blood sugar regulation. So believe it or not, heart attack and cardiovascular issues and diabetes are all in the same kind of world, because it starts with that blood sugar dysregulation, the plaquing, right, from those crystals. That's what actually develops around those arterial walls and impacts and restricts that blood flow to the heart, right? So when we look at diabetes, right, what are we looking at? We want to make sure, yes, exactly. I know, they're just so stubborn. And so we want to make sure. Right. I know they don't like the doctor. And I don't blame them. Like, I don't blame the conventional doctors are not good, or it's just they scare people and all kinds of stuff. But we still need to, our health is our wealth. And so drinking half our body weight in our ounces in our water, when we're looking at something like diabetes, etc., we want to keep our our simple carbohydrates low. We want to keep our protein high. Why? Because protein helps our body to repair and heal. Those protein sources, we want to make sure that they're lean protein sources. Chicken breast, turkey breast, white fish. Those are our lean protein sources. And that's going to help to keep our blood sugar stable. Then we combine those with high fiber, right? Complex carbohydrates. Think greenery, think our broccoli, think our kales, our collards, things like that. As we're adding those two things, it's going to keep our blood sugar balanced. Exactly. Protein for diabetes is like number one. They talk about carbs. The simple carbohydrates. Yes, spinach is also another one too, but watch your oxalates. Just an extra added, but spinach is perfect, right? Spinach, green beans, peas, all that stuff. Think greenery, because it has those alkaline nutrients in it, and it has lots of phytominerals. And so protein is going to keep that blood sugar stable. If you focus on carbs, right, and carbs, what's going to happen? You're going to inevitably eat more carbs, right? If you focus on protein, what are you going to do? You're going to focus on the protein. You're going to eat more protein. That protein is going to balance things. Now, you don't want to eat too much protein, but you want to make sure that you balance that protein with fiber, and that protein helps your body to repair and heal. So if we add that protein and we add those protein sources, it's going to balance that blood glucose faster, help people to feel better faster, right? And then we can start kind of perfecting it. It's really about getting patients stabilized as quickly as possible. My goal always is, no matter where a person's health state is, in the first 90 days to get them stable, right? Because a lot of times patients will come to you and they're just nutrient depleted. They haven't been eating well. They haven't been eating healthy. Which chart, baby? Oh, this one. You know what? I actually don't even have the whole chart, but it does have like occupational, financial. What I will do, Daphne, is I'll try to find this chart. It didn't, I don't even have the whole thing. It just did it did like a little bits of it. I don't even, hold on, it didn't even do it. Yeah, it's this chart is actually from a wheel. I'll find it for you and I'll send it to you. And so I think I already have your email. So when I actually have a resource that has this on here, I'll just email it to you and then you have it. So yeah, we want to just make sure, again, yeah. And speaking of the chart, that chart is kind of to the left there that you guys, so that is looking at all aspects of health. So that's holistic, right? And we'll talk a little bit about what holistic medicine really is, because when we're looking at the person, right, it's not just like they're stubborn and they don't want to do it, right? There also is social conditioning, there's emotional conditioning, there's spiritual conditioning, there's physical conditioning. There's all these aspects of conditioning that we want to look at and that we want to support in order for people to really get the breakthrough that they're looking for. There are reasons why people are not getting well, and it's not because people don't know eating fruits and vegetables is the key to good health. I can tell you that right now. It's a lot of times people are overwhelmed, people are tired, they don't have money, they don't have energy, they're in survival mode, they're in fight or flight. There's so many different reasons. So I really try to make things accessible, easy, fun, that way people keep coming back and they keep, doing the work. So one of the things that we are going to work on, so we talked about kind of developing that 12-week plan for you. And then now we're going to look at crafting. I don't know how we're going to get it where you guys can see it all. All right, cool. So it's kind of a little off, but so when you're looking at for your client, so once you've kind of got this for yourself, because remember, I'm not into false prophets, so you definitely need to make sure that you get this work for yourself. So we did a 12-week for yourself, and now we're looking at a 4-week educational flow. So we create kind of this structured progressive flow to help people to get well. So you're going to pick somebody, family, friend, whatever, and we're going to outline things like their hydration, their food, their movement, their stress management, those types of things. And we're going to give them, just really simple tools to do every single week. And as we're doing it, again, it's building, right? So each time it should build, one situation should, or excuse me, one habit should build into the next. So again, let's say if your first thing is they're not drinking enough water, they need half their body weight in ounces in water. Hey, Ansley, they need to drink half their body weight in ounces in water, and they're not doing that. So week 1 is, okay, how many ounces of water are you drinking comfortably? Okay, 64. All right, so now we're going to start adding every single day an additional 4 ounces. Let's say we get to 2 weeks and they've only gotten maybe to, hey, Dr. Michelle, they maybe only gotten to 80 ounces, right? So we're not going to force them and push them into the next 120 or whatever. We're going to kind of keep them where they're at comfortably, and then maybe we'll go, so how much water is too much? So most people are super dehydrated. Quite honestly, the amount of water you'd have to drink for saturation is quite a lot. But half your body weight consistently in ounces in water every single day actually can keep you fairly hydrated, actually super hydrated. Plus, too, it's the quality of water as well. A lot of people's water quality is not good. And again, like now that they're like slashing, like in Hampton Roads in Virginia, whatever, we were supposed to have like a water pipeline fixed or whatever, like a whole water treatment thing. Well, our funding got slashed by this new administration. So, water quality is an issue, and I think it's going to continue to be an issue, especially because, there are people, yeah, there are people. And I mean, like, has Flint gotten, or Flint, where's Flint? Has Flint gotten healthy water? In Alabama, have they gotten healthy water? Like, healthy water, like our basics are going to be a challenge in the state. So definitely, test your water, look at your water. I can do whole classes on water. This is not a water class, but just so quality of water is so key, because it's not just about how much water you're drinking. Because if you're drinking, water that is not, yeah, right. Like, I totally think Flint is still like, whatever. Hey, Sylvia, so making sure that the quality of water is good. And also too, I did a paper on this in school, I think in one of my undergrads, like a lot of the bottled waters also like are crap too. Like, they're not even good. Like Fiji water, I know this is really sad, but Fiji water has tons of chemicals in it. I used to love Fiji water, right? And it looks like artesian and all that, but it's like loaded with chemicals, right? So again, like drinking healthy water, like that is going to be an issue. So definitely filtration is going to be yeah, right. Not all bottled water. You really need a good, strong filter. A Berkey is a pretty affordable filter. You can get a tabletop unit for like $200. I know that sometimes can be, not accessible. But yeah, like a Berkey is probably a good place to start when you're looking, because you can just pour the water in there and it will filter the water. So you don't need, it's not like a service where you have to keep paying every single month, that kind of thing. So definitely, I'll eventually get to water class for sure. Um, and we really want to, when we're working with our clients, we have to start with the foundations. So before you start with, let's say you love herbs and you want to do the herbs and you want to do, supplements and all this stuff, before you do any of that, really work with your patients on their core foundation. So making sure their water, their food, their movement, their stress, all of that stuff is supported, because otherwise you're just going to make people customers on supplements and herbs. And that's not what we're trying to do. That's conventional medicine. That's allopathy. That's what they do. They get you hooked and dependent upon, some sort of, synthetic medication, but that's not going to work. So we definitely want to make sure that we're working with patients, on their foundational health practices first and foremost, before we get into the supplements that are there to supplement and support the patient. So patient education is really important, and knowing when to provide the information, when to observe, when to listen, when to redirect, really, really important. And it's really about patient transformation as well. And it's watching patients as they grow, as they evolve, as they begin to become more empowered in the work that you're doing, and the education that they're that you're instilling in them. Okay, so we also want to teach in layers and not just all at once. So what does that mean, teaching in layers? Again, you're not going to just kind of, let's say if a patient comes to you and they have tons of things going on, they've got, their water, their food, their movement, their stress, all of those things are out of balance, right? We want to really, again, slow and steady wins the race. So we want to work with them on that foundation of water first, and water quality. So intake and water quality, then work with them on basic nutrition, helping them to understand their carbohydrates, their proteins, their fats. Mineral spring water, Daphne, is the jam. That is definitely what we're talking about. So yeah, spring water is where it's at for sure. Aside from distilled has nothing in it as well, but it takes everything out. You want the spring water because it has the minerals in it. Okay, basic nutrition, making sure you educate patients about, their proteins, their fats. Thank you for the roses, Dr. Michelle. Their carbohydrates, and then working with them on their movement, right? Getting them to move their body, their 10,000 steps. Maybe it just starts off with 15 minutes of stretching and then it builds up from there. It's really about making things accessible for people and then building it up from there. And then we look at detoxification support. So detoxification support, not detox supplements, right? But things like, sweating, so steam, dry sauna, Epsom salt baths with baking soda. Those are all basic detoxification supports that the patient can do in order to help them in their healing process. So there's another method too in teaching. It's explain, show, do method. Hold on. Let me try to get this. Okay. All right, so we're going to explain, right, what's going on. So give them an overview of, we want to drink half our body weight in ounces in water because, our cells, they need to be able to have water to be able to flush. We want to naturally, hey, half-eaten apples. They want to, be able to flush, etc. When you're dehydrated, your body's just going to hold on to toxins and you're not going to move. It does going to affect all of the different processes. Then you show them, right? So in this case, you would show them with, let's say, a scale. Like the home scales will show water hydration levels and will show dehydration levels. Total body water is what it will show. And so that's a tool that they can see, they can actually watch and monitor. And then you're going to watch them as they add those ounces of water every single day. So, these are things we're going to explain why it matters. We're going to show them by either giving them an example, giving them something to match and monitor, and then obviously they're going to do it and see the improvement. That way they get super inspired because, again, they're going to see improvement, right? They're going to, if they do it, right, they're going to see the success from what you're showing them. And then as they get the success, they get excited. And then from there, they want to keep doing it and keep progressing, which is really cool. All right. So then we want to validate our patient's experience. Where is my validation? All right, cool. So we want to validate the patient's experience by asking open-ended questions. So what is the open-ended questions, right? So how does it feel in your body? What do you notice after drinking more water? Have you noticed that your skin is dry when you are dehydrated? Have you noticed your bowels are doing better? What have you noticed, right? So having them to, really think about what's going on with their system. And then you also want to normalize non-linear healing. So let's say, again, they may just hate the taste of water and you need to add different things into the water. That's okay, right? It doesn't mean that they're not doing the thing. It's acknowledging that, they may do really well for a period of time and then they may have a relapse, right? Why would they have a relapse? Let's say they have a major life event. They're moving, they're this, they're that. Life happens, right? Life happens when you're not expecting it. And so making sure that you're able to roll with it and you're able to be resilient and you're not shaming, blaming, putting them down, etc. Because guess what? Life happens. That's why I've kind of realized that whenever a patient's going through like a big life change, like moving or something like that, I pretty much tell them, put your diet aside, put all your stuff aside for right now. Let's get you through that. Why? Because you only have a certain amount of energy to get those things accomplished. And so we want to make sure that we don't lose people, just because, they have that event in their life. Then usually what happens is once they get past the event, then we're right back on schedule. And it's nice because they learn how that this is actually a lifestyle and not just something that they do, right? So what is a lifestyle? A lifestyle is something that flows with a person. It's something that they want to yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, it's got to be a flow, right? And I exactly, XO, like I have patients that will come in and they've got a big old list of supplements they're taking. They have all this dietary stuff, they have all this water stuff, but they're not implementing it because they're overwhelmed. Why are they overwhelmed? Because the practitioner just dumped all this stuff on their lap and didn't take into consideration that this is a human being, and being able to actually, hey, Somali, being able to apply and integrate these things into their lives, step by step, that is important for us to see the humanity in each other. And so slowly implementing these things and recognizing that, yeah, like life is going to happen, life be life. And so why am I going to, hey, MBW Melly, why am I going to just throw all this stuff on a person's lap and not take all that into consideration? It's just not going to work properly. All right, cool. So let's, ah, all right, cool. So micro tracking. So what is micro tracking? Micro tracking, again, small daily logs, right? So how many ounces of water are you drinking per day, right? Again, how did I come up with that 4 ounces every day? Because I said, okay, if somebody comes to me and they drink no water, how can I get them to a gallon in a month, right? So how can they get to a gallon in a month? 4 ounces of water every single day. So if you're drinking absolutely no water, right, we use the small daily logs where you're absolutely able to add a little bit, add a little bit, add a little bit, so that by the end of the whole month, you look back and you go, oh my God, look at what I did. Look at how I accomplished this. And so making sure that we're using those micro tracking, you can do that for so many things: hydration, food, mood, stools, anything that we want to track to be able to identify patternings. We want to be able to use these daily logs. And so I have digital logs that patients can use. I have also through my app that I have, or we have paper logs for people that are elderly or people that are just not tech savvy. There are people that are just, they have aversions to tech, and I get it. And so we have lots of paper tracking tools as well. And that can, I love the app because then I can see it too. So it adds a level of accountability. And when patients are actually coming in for their care, I'm able to go over the data with them, but it takes a little something. So normally I'll start them off on the written, and then eventually they'll get the hang of the digital tracking. All right. We want to reinforce the education that we're giving the patient. And so patients usually need about 3 to 7 times of hearing the same thing before these ideas stick. So don't expect you to say it once and patients to be able to get it. But as that retention increases, over and over and over again, especially with end of visit summaries, I cannot stress enough how important end of visit summaries are. That's why in my practice, all my patients get a post visit summary. It holds me accountable. It holds them accountable. So the end of visit summaries help, but also to email recaps of like, hey, we're working on this or we're working on that. That's going to increase your implementation rate by 3 times when you are not only telling them in the appointment, you're giving them the tools, you're having them almost repeat it back to you, and then you're reinforcing it with the follow-up. And then again, repetition, repetition, repetition. So much to the point the patients are almost sick of hearing it, right? Because again, these are foundational pieces that a lot of people don't know. Also, there's a lot of nuance and subtlety to it as well. What do I mean by nuance and subtlety? Meaning that there's a lot of hidden things that show up. This is why I want you to practice this first with yourself before you go practice it with a patient. Why do we want to do that? Because you want to make sure that you get that nuance, right? I wouldn't know that like I throw everything out by the wayside when I'm going through stress if I hadn't done it myself, right? Anytime I'm like moving or doing this or doing that, it's like all the excess kind of gets shifted to the side for me to be able to move forward. And so I know that because I've actually done it myself, but then teaching patients over and over and over again so that they understand it and they get that information. All right. So you also want to avoid authority centered language. So instead of saying things like you should, you need to, you must do this every day, that side of thing, because that's shaming, blaming, all that stuff. It's negative. It definitely, hey, melanin, it definitely, makes people feel shame, feel frustrated with themselves when they can't do it because people want to like improve and they want to do good for you. Like, but you want them to do good for them, not for you, right? We want to get out of that approval seeking because the patients shouldn't be doing it for your approval. They should be doing it for their own health. Oh, you're totally good. Thank you so much for showing up. And so you want to say instead you should instead of saying that, say, have you tried? Or instead of you need to, you can say, oh, here's something to consider. Instead of saying you must. Many people find it helpful too. Instead of saying do this every day, what feels doable for you? You can ask them like, hey, this is what we need to establish. What do you think is going to work for you? Like I'll even say to patients, I'm like, you know what? Do you feel like you're full right now? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm full. Like I've gotten enough. Like I just need to really work with what you've given me so far. And I won't push them farther, right? Like again, I really am mindful of the patient's pacing because again, this is not an achievement, it's not an accomplishment, it's not an event. This is them developing a healthier lifestyle. And so I want them to take this into their health. Yes, I get it, Christopher. And I think that those feelings are valid. And I really think that working with somebody to help you overcome those fears. I also recommend Dr. Carolyn Elliott's. She has a deepest fears inventory that is amazing for that. And so I'll put that in the chat for you. Hold on. That's a really good practice to do. I put it in there. Yeah. Carolyn Elliott's deepest fears inventory. Because remember, fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear is an aspect of the psyche and an aspect of the conscious awareness and the conscious mind and the subconscious mind that's being triggered. And so in order to look at that fear, you have to kind of tackle it head on and really get to what it actually is. So that could be really helpful for you. You look into that and let me know. And so we want to make sure that we are encouraging, motivating, inspiring, and supportive as best as we can be when we're working with our patients. And again, we're building autonomy and uh, not reliance. I almost said resilience, which we are building. And so why are we building autonomy? Because we don't want patients to be dependent upon us. right? Like I'm not the big I am, like I'm nobody's guru. I'm here to teach you as a teacher, right? So that you learn independently and you understand how what you need to do in order to help with your health. And so what does that look like? That looks like practical skill building, that looks like self-care techniques, but it also looks at those foundations, and that's primarily what we're focused on in this class is your health foundations. If you don't have your health foundations, your water, your food, your movement, your stress, all that stuff worked out, forget about the supplements, forget about the herbs. Those things are great, but again, it's not going to override your foundational health. And so many practitioners skip over the foundational health. They want to jump patients to IV therapy. They want to jump patients to fancy lab testing. They want to jump patients to, really expensive supplement protocols instead of really getting back to the basics. Remember back in the day, our ancestors, they didn't have all that fancy stuff, right? We need to get our mindsets back into the basics, the things that actually make our bodies work, because those are the things that are going to sustain us, not necessarily 1,000 supplements and 1,000 herbs and 1,000 this and 1,000 that. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hey, wireless, don't get me wrong. Those things are helpful and we will use those things. However, that's not the foundation of our health. We want to make sure that we have 80% foundational health things stabilized, our water, our food, our movement, our stress. We want to make sure that those are 80% in check before we add supplements, before we add herbs, before we add those things. Because if we don't do that, we're just building off of, we're just pretty much a conventional doctor, or we're practicing alternative medicine, which is just not my belief system. Here's another thing that we want to consider. We want to consider cultural, spiritual, and language considerations. We want to avoid assuming. And so avoid assuming that your patients know everything, right? And assume that they yes, exactly. I know that the supplements are not the be all end all. In fact, they are just, that's what supplement, it's there to supplement, to support what you're doing, not to fix it, change it, make anything better, right? So we use it almost like medicine. That's what the supplement should be for. So in working with patients, we have to meet patients where they're at. So we're not going to assume that they know everything, but we're also not going to avoid, right, teaching them proper terminology as well, right? So I've been people have totally told me, oh my God, why do you speak so, and it's like, look, the reason I do that is because I'm really working with people to be able to help them to heal and help them to be supportive, right? But also too, I learn about my patient's culture. Like I've treated people from all over the world, all different backgrounds. I've treated all different style Christians. I mean, I've learned so many different sects of Christianity. It's wild, right? I've treated people that are Jewish. I've treated people that are Muslim. I've treated people, I don't do as well with the atheists. I must be honest. They kind of, I don't know. I don't quite like because it's difficult when we get into faith-based conversations or we get into spirituality conversations, because there's nothing to stick to. And I understand people have lost faith out of organized religion, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about a consciousness that is bigger than ourselves. For us, it's job, but for a lot of people, it can be all different types of things. And so I put my stuff aside. I'll remember, oh my gosh, I had this lady from Carolina. She brought her daughter to me who had these chronic UTI infections. Come to find out, it was all the herbicides and pesticides that were spraying that they were spraying in the farms, right? That were near her. Anyway, she came to me and she was like devout Christian. I mean, like serious. And she homeschooled her daughter and everything. And she came to me and she said, look, I looked you up and I know your background. I know you're Afro-Indigenous, all these things. She goes, but here's the thing. And I know that you're really good at what you do. I said, here's what I need. No spiritual woo-woo stuff. I just need you to focus on this. I said, aye, Captain. You don't have to tell me twice, and I was able to help support, her baby so that she wasn't, she didn't have to take any antibiotics anymore. We were able to clean her liver out. We were able to get all that, straight. So she didn't have these chronic UTIs. And I was able to teach her how to teach her daughter how to maintain her health. Right. But see, that's the point. It's like, it's not about me, right? It's not about me imposing. And don't get me wrong. There was a couple of times where I was like, but I held myself. I was proud of myself. I held myself back because I said, this is not what they're coming for. They're not coming for, because I could tell daughter wanted to explore a little bit more. Mom was kind of keeping her, in her bubble. But again, that was not why I was being contracted. I was being contracted to help with these chronic UTIs. And so that's what I did. I did that. I did that alone. And I was very respectful. I've also treated people who are we're talking women that aren't even allowed to wear pants kind of thing. Like those super, like really, and working with them. And again, not trying to fix them, change them. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Eventually she'll get out there, right? Planting those seeds. But it's not my job to prophetize to her. It's not my job to fix her, change her, make her anything different. It's really about being respectful for her culture and traditions. And let me tell you, because I'm so open like that, I've been able to learn. Now, if you are a person that it's like Christian and Jesus is your only thing, my suggestion would be to stay in that lane, meaning like have a Christian practice and work with other Christians, because unfortunately, you're going to come across so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And if you impose your own viewpoint on them, again, that's not ethical, but also it can be very harmful, right? So just know your limitations. Like for me, I knew that I couldn't work with people that were essayers. I just couldn't. It's just not a thing that I could work with. And then for a period of time, until I did a lot more of my own research and unpacking, I didn't work with people who were transgender. It wasn't because I didn't feel comfortable with them. It was because I didn't want to do any more harm. And then I did a lot of deconstruction and looking at it and research and that sort of thing. And then I was, okay, all right, perfect. I can now open up and work with this community where I am not doing more harm to the community. Because again, it's not about you. It's about making sure that the people that you're working with and the people that you're treating are getting the care that they need without causing any more harm to them. So just know your limitations and know, where you're at, and it's totally okay with wherever you're at. All right. So, yeah. I know, right? Well, it's like bringing care back to healthcare, right? Like that's what it's about. Thank you so much, my love. Okay, so a little terminology that I just want to make sure everybody's clear about. Okay, alternative medicine. Alternative medicine is literally, there's very little science. Thank you. There's very little science to alternative medicine. Alternative medicine is pretty much like this. Let's say you go, okay, I don't want to take this blood pressure medication. Now I'm going to go look up what I can take instead. Right. So I'm going to take cayenne instead, or I'm going to take, hawthorn berries instead. That's alternative medicine. Thank you for the, I don't know what those are, the little sparklers. And so that's alternative medicine. So alternative medicine is just an alternative to, again, not a lot of science in that. I don't practice alternative medicine, even though I have a degree in alternative medicine. And so the reason for that is just because of the lack of science, because you don't know how much do you need, what's the dose, etc. Naturopathy focuses on natural remedies, but also the body's ability to heal itself. That's what a naturopath is, and that's what they do. A holistic medicine provider or doctor such as myself, what we do is treat the whole person, the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions. We treat everything, right? We're not just looking at one aspect of the human. We're looking at the relationship that the emotions have with the physical body, that the physical body has with, let's say the, spiritual body and the mind, etc. So we're looking at the relationship that all of that has. Functional medicine looks at root causes using systems biology. So uses a lot of laboratory testing to be able to determine what organ systems need to be supported. It's kind of like a modern naturopathy, to be honest with you. Integrative medicine combines your more conventional approaches with your complementary ones. So, an integrative medicine provider is actually dually trained, a lot of times in conventional practices, along with your complementary approaches. So, I have certifications in functional medicine and integrative medicine. Obviously, I'm a holistic doctor. I also a board certified naturopath, and I have a degree in alternative medicine. So, I just want to, these words are not used interchangeably. And the reason I just wanted to clarify is because there's a lot of confusion around these words, meaning that people will say, oh, I'm an integrative provider. Oh, okay, well, what training did you do for that? Oh, well, I went to a holistic school, right? Or a person's like, oh, well, I take supplements. I'm a holistic provider. No. Like, we want to make sure we're using proper terminology so we're not confusing our patients. So I just wanted to make sure that is clear, the differences. All right. Also, the differences in education here. So allopathy, I think we've talked about this before, but allopathic providers are going to be your conventional, thank you for the follow, your conventional doctors, your medical doctors, your nurse practitioners, your osteopaths, those kinds of people. For your undergrad, 4-year med, usually 3 to 7 years residency, they focus on disease management. That is the goal. And then emphasis on pharmaceuticals and surgery. They have very limited nutrition and preventative education. They need to go to, right, get education if they're going to hang their shingle as a holistic provider or a functional medicine provider or an integrative medicine provider. They have to have additional training. You can't just base your, you just can't hang your shingle on your allopathic training because the training is so different. Yes, a DO is still an osteopathic doctor, and that happened many, many years ago. They, in order to be considered under the AMA, the American Medical Association, they let go of a lot of their holistic practices, and now they're under the diagnose and manage model. So yes, an osteopathic doctor is an allopathic provider, even though they began more in a holistic sense with Andrew Steele. You still have some more traditional osteopaths that will still do hands-on manipulation, but they're very far in between, and they don't teach it in their standard medical school, unfortunately. In natural medicine education, now if you want to be a doctor, of course, there's a 4-year undergrad degree, there's a 4-year naturopathy degree, and then it says optional residency, but there is a clinical aspect of it that we do have. There are 2 different types of naturopaths you should be aware of. There's a naturopathic medical doctor, which they have hybrid training. They do a little bit of conventional medicine and a lot of natural medicine. They're not as adequately trained in either one. So it's kind of like jack of all trades, master of none. Because remember, you've got a diagnose and manage model in allopathy, and then you've got the body that heals itself in the naturopathy. So they're kind of conflicting. So it's weird to put them in the same category. I'm a traditional naturopath, meaning that I'm solely trained in natural health care, and that's what I did. I did not want to be a prescriber. I didn't want to DA number, all that stuff. I did not want to participate in pharma at all. So I am an integrative medicine provider because I went through integrative medicine training so that I can work with conventional doctors, but I refer back and forth and we work together. Now in naturopathy and natural medicine, we focus on prevention. We focus on whole person care. Hey, Ambria. We focus on lifestyle, nutrition, natural therapies, and more extensive training in preventative approaches. So just so you know that kind of trajectory if you're interested in that perspective. Now, from Intro to Holistic Medicine 1, we take 3 weeks break, and then we go into Intro to Holistic Medicine 2, which is all about detoxification. And then that's going to move us for, those are your kind of biosciences that you'll have, your foundations that you have for your holistic health coaching program. So just so you know. All right, and then here are the allopathic providers. Again, just so you understand, medical doctor, doctor of osteopathy, physician's assistant, nurse practitioner, registered nurse. These are your allopathic, conventionally trained providers. These providers need to have additional training in order to be natural providers. They can't just hang their shingle and say they're natural providers using their using their allopathic training. The reason for that is because in their allopathic training, again, they're being taught to diagnose and manage. But in their allopathic training, their licensure has a certain set of standards. And so if they operate outside of their licensure, they are risking their licensure. So in order to prevent risking their licensure, you'll want to get additional training, like a course like this or something similar, so that you're able to say, I have this education on top of. Let me tell you something. They are looking to pull licenses. I was a massage therapist. I started off as a massage therapist. I ended up having my massage therapy license revoked because I was a naturopath. The state of Virginia did not recognize naturopathy. Even though I brought every document that they needed, they still didn't recognize it. So they ended up pulling my massage license as a response to that. So dealing with board, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's also because I was helping people heal, and no likey, we don't help people heal around here. So yeah, I thought, when I moved from Southern California in 2009 to Virginia. And natural doctors weren't a thing at that time. And so here I was out in the open. Number one, I was a young woman. I still am a young woman, but young, Black, educated, triple threat, so really I went through a lot, having really defending natural medicine, and really supporting. So one of the things they did was remove that, because they couldn't get me on anything else, so they removed that, and because I didn't harm anybody, so they removed my and then I could have paid, copious amounts of money to go get it. But at that point, it didn't really matter. Ayurveda is a totally natural practice. So Ayurveda is one of our traditional natural practices. So Ayurveda actually predates our Western medicine by 10, 15, 20,000 years. So Ayurveda is one. Also TCM, or traditional Chinese medicine, is also one that's very, very old, 10,000 plus years. It's a natural, totally natural. It's an entirely different system. So Ayurveda has its own system. TCM has its own system. And then, of course, naturopathy has its own system. Holistic medicine has its own system. Functional medicine has its own system. So they all have their own systems in terms of how they're treating. And by system, I mean therapeutic order. So systems are, how we treat the body, right? And then therapeutic order is the standards of practice that you operate in. So I just want people to understand that, if you have these licensures, making sure that you have additional education so you don't put, your other education at risk. All right. And then here's the natural types of providers. Hold on one second. Yes. Hold on one second, guys. All right, cool. So, and then we have various natural providers. So our naturopathic doctor, like I was telling you, 4-year doctoral program. Which different types, sir? Can you flesh it out for me? Like, can you which types of providers are you talking about? The allopathic ones or the natural ones? So the last ones we were talking about are the allopathic providers. Those are your medical doctors, your osteopathic doctors, your nurse practitioners, your physician's assistants. Those are your allopathic providers. Then we have your natural providers. So your naturopathic doctors like myself. You have licensed acupuncturists, which those practice TCM. You have your licensed massage therapists as well. And then you have your certified nutritionists. Those are also other kind of natural providers. Oh, Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is its own system. It's natural. So we have Ayurveda. Then we have TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine. Like a licensed acupuncturist would be trained in TCM, would be trained in traditional Chinese medicine. So, yeah, I don't know. Did you have a question about Ayurveda? Ayurveda is its own system, and they deal with the doshas. So the doshas are the various. Oh wait, hold on one second. So the doshas, they have like they subdivide the body into doshas like the vata, the pitta, and the kapha. And so they look at your pulse, they look at your tongue, they do a full assessment to be able to determine what your dosha is. And then there's like a diet for that dosha. There's a there's various different things, herbs for that dosha, etc., lifestyle practices for that dosha. I would say, so in one of my degrees we had to study Ayurveda. I would say, because I was so Western trained, that when I got to Ayurveda, I had a lot of it in yoga too, but when you get into like actually being like in the Ayurveda, like I am not an Ayurvedic doctor at all. Like, let me tell you something. Because it's very deep, and I would say you really have to have some sort of root to it, at least in order to do it justice. I could see myself doing a little TCM, like traditional Chinese medicine. I could definitely see myself in that direction for sure. I love acupuncture. I've done it for years, and acupressure and all of those things. And so with TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is its own system as well. They deal with the meridians, they deal with the chi and the prana, and making sure, hey, Tata kisses, making sure that the energy is flowing through those meridian systems. So yeah, it's really fascinating when we get into it and we break it down, in terms of all the different components. Yeah, to be a licensed massage therapist, so 20 plus years ago when I was a massage therapist, like there we really loved learning, right? And so we worked in, yeah, of course, we worked in, different healing centers, and we were, exploring with this and exploring with that and learning this and learning that. And this was kind of before the more like industrialized massage world came in, with the whole situation with like Massage Envy and all of that. And so nothing against those places, but, there's a real art form to massage. I found that patients would, kind of use me almost like a pill. And that's why I had to kind of move out of massage anyway, just because I wanted more. So I kept going back to school, So eventually I didn't even practice massage anymore. So by the time they took the license, it didn't really matter because, I wasn't really practicing that because it was limited, right? It only takes you so far. So certified nutritionist is another natural provider, and they're just going to focus on, they have certificates on up to master's degrees in nutrition. And again, they're teaching you specifically how to use nutrition. Pretty much food is medicine. Another natural provider that I didn't mention on here is herbalists. So herbalists are amazing natural providers as well. Master herbalists are amazing. They learn, which herbs to use for what, etc. My one thing with herbal medicine though is making sure you have some sort of biosciences training, that you're really understanding what herbs are doing, for your body, and making sure that you again work those foundations of your health, your water, your food, all those things first and foremost before you add herbs, because herbs are medicine. Literally, your pharmaceuticals are just herbs combined with synthetics. So like for instance, aspirin is white willow bark, so again, you can take those. Actually, it wasn't. My massage therapy licensure wasn't that difficult. There was a board test that we had to take, and it also depends on what state you're in and what, like in California, they did it by the city. So you had to do like each individual city, you had to have a separate licensure, which was a mess. But I think now they have like a national board too, where you can just take it nationally. I'm not sure though. And I would say if you want to be a PT, definitely, I would do massage therapy. I would also do nutrition if you're going to be a PT as well, because again, the muscular skeletal system absolutely needs healthy nutrition. And I found that if patients didn't have that's why I kind of started venturing off, is because I found that patients, were using me like a pill, and then their nutrition was horrible. And because their nutrition was horrible, their bodies just weren't really healing. And so I wanted to make sure that their bodies were actually healing. And so again, I was really motivated to kind of continue on that training. But definitely, like, PTs are amazing. And they have a lot of like integrative PT programs now. And they also do like manual therapy with PT, which is kind of a combination of massage therapy and physical therapy. So towards the end of my career, I was only doing like 15-minute, 30-minute appointments because I worked with a lot of athletes and people like that. And so it was real spot treatment. And patients were paying me like crazy amounts of money for 15 minutes of work just because number one, the skill level, but number two, just because, I was able to get them better really fast, just with trigger points and trigger point therapy and all of the anatomy trains. Definitely look up Thomas Myers and the anatomy trains. I trained with him. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. And so looking at the myofascial system, just amazing. So let me know if you guys have any other questions about any other types of providers. I'm happy to answer them. And then we're back around to our first slide. So I'm going to just pop the slides down now. Hold on 1 second. All right, perfecto. Here we are. We made it. So we are done with our class for this evening for Intro to Holistic Medicine, week 11. So we finished our conversation about patient education, how to deliver proper patient education. As always, I will leave this up on the YouTube. I also left up, it's Thomas Myers, Meyers. Tom, he's amazing. Like if you have any sort of like muscular skeletal issue, look him up, look his anatomy trains book up, because it will really shed light on which muscle groups you may be working on. Also look up trigger point therapy as well. Because if you learn your trigger points, you learn where your body's activated. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. You learn kind of where it's activated. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The fascia is so like, that's a whole world all in of itself. It's like absolutely amazing. So this week was all about patient education. I will, of course, be teaching on Saturday as well. And last week I talked about self-concept. I really wish I would have been able to teach those classes live. I may teach them live again during our 3-week break, but they're at least still on the YouTube. So go ahead and look at those. They're also in your core shell. Yeah, exactly. And then, so with your foot, like it goes all up, like when you're looking at your fascia, underneath your foot and your plantar surface of your foot goes all the way up, your gastrocs, which are your calves, and then your tibialis anterior, which are your shins. And yeah, it's amazing all the different patternings and stuff. Like, yeah, again, like by the time I had did all that in my career, like I had been doing that for so long and was teaching in that capacity. Yeah, my YouTube channel is, you just look up Dr. Erica Steele on my YouTube. I think it's called Holistic Practices. I think that's my name, but there's a link in my bio. You can click the link and then it's like right there, like you'll see it. So yeah, and so all the classes for last week on self-concept are all on the YouTube. So definitely check that out. That's about your identity, shifting your identity, into a new identity for yourself. And so definitely a good class for sure. Again, I love teaching that class. I was bummed I didn't get to teach it live, but I may teach it on our break anyway. So, all right. All right, guys, I am going to sign off for this evening. It's been great to see all of you again. Thank you all for stopping by. I will see you on Saturday, and I'll put everything in the core shell so that you guys can have it. I was having some issues with uploading. So so we'll get it on there, and like, share, subscribe, and comment for more. So, all right, bye. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, IG.